This is SmartBuild 101 release. Okay, so I'm going to run through just all the new stuff that we have with this release. I'm not going to go super deeply into anything, just try to give you an idea of what's new, how to get it to work, how to set it up. Some of these things get pretty deep and we could go into a lot, but I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. And then at the end, as usual, we'll have time for any sort of discussions, any questions you have on the new stuff. We do have pretty much everybody in our team here, so we have all the experts here if you have any questions, or we can talk about future things you'd like to see or any other issues that you have. Okay, so I'm going to start going through some of this new stuff. And as is typical, there's a few things here in settings. And so instead of jumping back and forth, I'll try to cover a couple things here in the settings before we jump into a job, and then we'll actually take a look at these things in the job. I guess the first place I'll go here are the outputs. And so we've done quite a bit of work on layouts, and this applies to the wall layouts, the post layouts, and the stud layouts. Um, I guess I'll just go through the list here and then we'll take a look at how to just make sure you get these set up. Some of these things are going to happen automatically. For one thing, it should be wrapping the opening descriptions. So instead of running a single line all the way across, it should be wrapping those, which should make the drawings a lot cleaner. Um, the elevation drawings that show the descriptions of the openings as well. There's two different elevations. One is like the wireframe and it does show the description. There's another elevation that is more like the rendered view that you would see. So we have two different ones. Elevation will wrap the descriptions as well. But we also added an option for a door and window schedule that you can use instead of having the text written out on the layout. So if you want to opt in, I'm going to open up just the wall layout here on mine. And it's just a checkbox that if you do come in here, and this is going to be true for, again, the post layout and the stud layout, if you check the door and window schedule, instead of a text description for your doors and windows on these layouts, you're going to get a separate schedule with a label on the layout itself. And so in that case, the description wrapping isn't even going to come into play because it's not going to be on your layout. So you have those two options. Automatically, it will wrap those descriptions. So if you don't come in here and change anything, it will wrap those descriptions. If you want to use a door and window schedule instead, you do have to come in here and check this box. The other part that is new is you have an option now for the font size. This is going to be all the font, all the text on the layouts that you can choose either medium, small, or large. And the way that we have this set up right now is no matter what size you choose here, if a dimension doesn't fit, and this includes the dimension size, if it doesn't fit between the ends of the dimension line, then it will reduce the size of that dimension. And if it doesn't fit in after that, it will move that dimension up above the dimension line from inside of the dimension tags. So there is some automation that's going on here to get, especially the dimensions to fit inside of the dimension lines or to bump those up above it. But and it'll do that automatically, but you can also come in here and create separate font sizes if you know that there's a job that has a lot going on with it. Um, you could use a small font and then it just is going to be easier to read. Things aren't going to be overlapping as much. If you have, a more simple job, you could have a large font where things will be easier to read and, nothing's going to get in the way. So you can have those large, or you can just keep it at medium. And the way we have this set up right now is you do have to come in here and create separate outputs for different font sizes potentially. So if this one's medium, we could type in medium here. if I save that, and then we could add another one if we come in, if we do the wall layout. And like if this one's large, I could say large and do the door and window schedule. You can include your logo. I don't have that here. And you can include these header lines that will show up in the top left-hand corner. So the way this is set up now is you can have different outputs that have these different font sizes if you want as different options, and kind of depending on the job, you can, upon output, select which one you want. But again, there will be some automation of this. We are wrapping the descriptions now, or you can use this door and window schedule. So you can kind of play around with those and see which ones are going to work for you. And I'll save all that. Yeah, so this one gets a little bit in depth, and this will make some more sense as we get into the job. But just to give you a sense for how these work, what we have added into this release in the span tables, if you're using span tables, and I set up just one kind of a simple example just to display how this works. We added the ability to include job questions as criteria for what materials get picked out of the span tables. And so we'll come back here. I'm going to kind of walk through this from the beginning. In this kind of simple example here where I have these two different foundation types that are going to be selecting two different types of post assemblies in this case. And so the first step really is in the framing rules. And I'll go in here to this parent account. And you can add in job questions. So these are the job questions that we've had here. And what I did in this case is I added this question. You just hit add. And I selected a, where you can have a drop down choices. And so if you edit this, just foundation type, and the two options are pure, appear, or in ground. Just as kind of a simple example. And so in any given job, you can go in and you can have blank, or you can select from the list. So I set that up. You can use up to 4 job questions. And obviously you could have a lot more potential options here in this list. So that'll come into play where you can drive different types of materials being selected just by the different options that get selected. So I have this set up here in the foundation type in my job questions. And then I'm using this in conjunction with the post assemblies, which we did a webinar on post assemblies, and Royden also did a separate video getting more deeply into post assemblies. These are very powerful. They take definitely some work to get them set up just because people do things so differently. And there's a lot of different ways that you can use these. So I won't go too deeply into the post assemblies and how these work. You can go check out those other videos, or we can have some discussions at the end of this. But basically these post assemblies allow you to automate everything that is involved with the post, from like where it connects to the roof all the way down to the foundation and including the foundation and the post material. So a single selection of a material can drive all kinds of different materials and your foundation as well. And you can get into a whole bunch of things because you can use conditional questions as well, where you could have different things happening at your corner post. You can have different things happening with your gable walls versus your eave walls. You can have different materials coming in at the connection at the roof if you're using maybe rafters versus trusses. So there's a lot that you can do to dial in these post assemblies and a lot of different options. Today, I'm going to keep it pretty simple just to demonstrate what is new in this particular release. So mostly I just want to point out here, I just have two post assemblies set up right now in this system. One is kind of using like a permacolumn kind of product, and the other one is just an 8x8 with post hole. So here's the foundation type is a post hole. I have some different materials coming in, some uplift blocks, just some clips, just kind of demonstrate a few things, and then I'll go back to this one. And this one is a post hole, but I'm connecting this with that peer question. So you'll see how that works in a second. But this one is set up with a permacolumn kind of product and some different hold downs, some different clips. So I have these post assemblies set up as well. And then the next piece of this is going back to the span tables. And I'll jump into this Eave post is where I set this one up, but these can be set up for any of the different structural type of materials that are in the span tables. You can do the same kind of thing with any of these different materials. And I have these already set up here, but the way that I set these up is the first thing you have to do is hit this update questions button. And what this is going to do is allow you to choose up to 4 questions that can be used as criteria here. So I did the foundation type. Once I selected that, it showed up here in as a column here as part of the span tables. We could come in here and do 4 more. You can see that these are the same job questions that I had set up. Some of these aren't going to apply, but you can set up 4 of these to apply directly to the span tables. Here's that foundation type. The loading already shows up here, but you could add in some additional ones. I'm just going to leave it at this. So, but you could have up to 4 of these. So I selected the foundation type. I hit update. It showed up here, and it will show up there. These 4 will apply to all of these span tables. So when you select it for one, it's going to apply to every single span table. So these 4 questions are going to have to span across all of these tables. Let us know if that doesn't work. We'll try to kind of keep it simple. But we could potentially have each span table have its own questions, but right now we're limited to 4 questions for all the different span tables. So you have to use them potentially wisely. So once I got this foundation question on here, you can come in, and if you double click in here, all those different options that you could add in, I just added in these 2, but you could have more here, are going to be options that you can choose. And as you can see, I chose the pier in this case and the in-ground in this case. And kind of the big thing here is that you'll notice that everything else is the same. In this case, the wall height, the post spacing, the building depth, those are the same. So when we get into a job, the only thing that's going to be different here to drive these different materials is going to be whether for that job question you pick pier or you pick in-ground. So you can see that with the pier, I have a permacolumn kind of product that's coming in, that assembly that I set up. So you can double click here and you can select a material, individual material if you're not using post assemblies. Or if you are using post assemblies, you can select those. And I guess the post assemblies, you'll recognize them by the SKU is going to be matching with this at A6 as opposed to the SKU of the individual material. So you can go through, you select those. And so you can see here, I have this set up to where if we have this, all these conditions and you choose this foundation type, then you're going to get this particular post assembly in this case, which is going to drive multiple materials, those clips, and the actual post material and a permacolumn in this case, and the depth of that foundation. And in this case, it's going to give us an 8x8 post if we select in-ground. So I think that's maybe everything that we want to see in here. I mean, obviously, if you want to use these, it takes quite a bit of preparation and thought based on how you want to do things. We can help you with that, and there are again some other videos on the post assemblies. But we can help you think through this. You can call our support line, or we can set up a time separately to help you work through this as well. Um, okay, I think we're going to call that good here on the settings. And at this point, I'll jump back to my home page. I do have a job that I set up here, so we'll open this job up, our 3D model. It's going to load up all of our settings and our materials and get all our pricing. Might take a second here. And here we are. Okay, so this is the model that I have set up. I think maybe since it's a little fresh in our mind with those post assemblies, we'll just demonstrate the post assemblies. So I'll turn off the shell. And if you remember, I do have this set up to select that particular span table that we looked at for the posts, including the width of the building that came in, the height, the loading. And then if we go over to the details real quick, and we'll come back here, with the wall framing for my posts, I have it set up as auto, which is going to just trigger it to go and look at those span tables in order to determine um, what post materials to use based on the span tables. I'm doing match post for my corner post, and same with my gable. So those are all looking to match the post material. And right now, this is going to mean that the gable posts are going to match what it finds for the Eave posts in this case. So that can get a little bit tricky, something to keep in mind. Um, but if we jump back over here to the job, right now I do have in-ground selected. And if you remember, that is just going to give us these in-ground 8x8 posts. So if we jump over here to our posts, we do have those 8x8 posts coming in for pretty much everything. I don't have my jam post set up to be using auto, so those are going to be a different material, but everything else should be coming in the same. So right now, those are in ground. You can have this as blank. We could have had a line there that doesn't include an answer for this at all. And then if we switch over to pure without changing anything else and hit refresh, it's now going to go look at that same span table. It's going to look at all those same conditions, except it's looking at what is the answer for this foundation type. And if it's set up like this, then it is going to bring in this permacolumn kind of situation that I just have set up here. So it did bring in the actual foundation settings that I have, the post material. If we go look on our material list, I have a nail lamb coming in with the permacolumn. It's also calling out the permacolumn separately. I have those set up as a separate material. And then anything else that we have associated with those assemblies, which some of this, like these clips and these hold downs and things, um, are also coming in as part of that. So if we switch back over here to the in-ground, some of this will change, just kind of depending on how we have that set up. So yeah, I just have some different kind of things coming in with those. So that is kind of a simple example, but hopefully it gives you an idea of how these work and how you could potentially use these. So it might be something to brainstorm and think about, and then you can run it by us and we can help you get that set up as well. And we can get more deeply into this coming up here in a little bit once we get to the end if you want to. But a couple other things here I just want to make sure that we cover. One group of things that we've done here is related to purlins. And specifically quite a bit with Eave purlins, or just a couple things actually with Eave purlins. So we have a separate Eave purlin In this case, I have it set up as a tube product just so we can see it better here. But you can see that this is considered an Eve purlin in all these situations. There is a separate material for that. Um, you can use match purlin, and that is just going to go look at your standard purlin material. So there are two different materials you can use here. And one of the things that we've changed here just across the board, so this is, I guess, FYI, if this doesn't work for you, then let us know. But in this type of a porch situation here, this is an offset down zero porch where it's matching up right at the eave. So when I input this, um, the height is set up as offset down zero. So it's just matching right up with the main building roof here. And what we've done is it automatically at this point is going to use an Eve purlin in this condition. So if you do something different with a purlin in this type of a connection, you can use a different Eve purlin than you're using for your purlin material. And it is automatically going to do that. If you do the match purlin, which I think quite a few people have, this won't affect you. But if you are using a different Eve purlin material from your purlin material in this type of condition, you are going to see this change. And so if that is a problem, let us know. But I think most people can use match purlin just to keep the same material. Or if you do need to change that and you want it to be something else, then you can select that as a different material. So that's just kind of an FYI, it's a change. The other piece that we added here is the Eve purlin now. Purlins have their own length overrides. So like some of these other materials, like most other materials, you can do length overrides where you can limit the part lengths that will be selected for the purlin. So in this case, for my purlin lengths, I'm only using 16 and 20 foot 2x4s, even though I do have a whole bunch of other lengths available. I think most of you are familiar with these, but because Eve purlins are a separate material, we just didn't have those length overrides in there before, but now we do. We added those in. The other one that we added in here, if you use this, is we have this overlap purlin option, which I don't have at the moment, but if I turn that on, if you're using overlap purlins, the way that it works right now is like this. And these can be flat, or I have mine on edge, but right now I have these on edge, but they could be flat as well. And you'll notice it doesn't overlap this top purlin here. And so there's some settings associated with the top purlins. I could offset these and but what we do have now that we added, if this is something that you're interested in, is you can overlap this top purlin now. So it's just a checkbox here in the purlin section. If you check it, it's going to overlap this top purlin just like the rest of your purlins. And this is staggering these. And so there's some other settings here that you can kind of use to manipulate and control these as well. Yeah, so that's it for the purlins. Just a few little changes there. Okay, and now jump into another feature here that is new, and this is for slider doors and cutting the sheathing or the panels at the trackboard. So underneath the door and window group and down here at the slider door post framing, there's going to be some new settings down here. So here's our trackboard material. And that's all, these are all been available, but the things that are new is this sheathing a trackboard. And there's three options here. That is to always cut, never cut, to cut at the eave walls only. The default on this is going to be never cut. That's how it's going to come in when you get this update. And that's because we try to maintain the behavior that you have. We try not to change things on you too much unless you want to opt into them. And so it's going to be operating the way it always has and so that's what the never cut is going to do. But if you do want to use this, you can either choose always cut or you can do cut at eaves only. And I'll show you here how this works. But if you do always cut, any slider door, whether it's an eave or a gable, is going to have this behavior of cutting the panels at the trackboard. You can set up so it's just eave. So obviously that's just not going to do this on the gables, but it will do it on the eaves. And you can go in the advanced edit and you can do this on individual walls or individual doors. Um, I'll keep this here at always. And so a couple other settings that go along with this, and this is offset above trackboard and offset below trackboard. And that is going to be the sheathing that is going to offset here. And you'll see how that works. So the easiest way to look at this is if we go to the drawings and let's look at the gable wall maybe first. So I'll pull up the sheathing drawing for, oh, I think it's doing a refresh on me there. So we'll pull up the sheathing drawing and you can see here that I have two different panels, and I guess I could switch this back over to Never Cut. This is what you see right now with Never Cut, as I'm sure most of you know. Um, these panels, this panel is going to run all the way through the trackboard. So we have this 20-foot, 7-inch piece running all the way through the trackboard. If I did cut it Eave only, it's going to keep this gable wall the same. Maybe if you move this opening around out in the field, but I'll do always cut here. And so we'll see that it's going to cut these panels, and it's cutting these at the trackboard. So it'll cut it right at the bottom or in the top of the trackboard, but the offset above and below, these will either, if you're using a positive, it's pulled away from that trackboard. So this is actually, and you can't see here because we have some of the trim in the way, but it's going to pull this panel 1 inch away from the bottom of the trackboard. And at the top, it's going to pull it 1 inch away from the top of the trackboard when I have this set up as 1 inch. If we set this up at 0, it's going to be right at the edge of that trackboard. And the other part of this is, if you change your trackboard, it will adjust these cuts to the size of the trackboard. And you can also move this trackboard as well. So right now, the bottom of this trackboard is placed right at the top of the opening. And that is the way that I believe that's the way it's always been. That might have been a little bit of a change. Actually, now I think about it, I think we dropped it down 1 inch below, but now 0 is going to be right at the top of that opening. And if you need to move this, like if we change that trackboard offset, it will adjust that. And I believe this is going to take it up above the opening, but we'll see here what it actually does. I forget. Yeah, so that took the trackboard 5 inches above the opening, and you can see that these panels also adjusted as a result of moving that trackboard. So when it cuts these and when it applies these offsets of pulling it away, or you could overlap if you do a negative number. I believe you can use a negative number, but as you adjust the trackboard, the cuts are going to adjust with that. If you adjust the size of the trackboard, it's going to adjust these as well. And yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, obviously on these panels, there's nothing below, but it's going to use the offset above the trackboard to pull those away from the trackboard to give the correct lengths of those. You notice here that it's not cutting this one. If it's not fully cutting into that panel, it's going to leave it as a full length. So there's no little notches or anything at this, if that's something, I don't think people want to see that, but if it is, let us know. And And okay, yep. So that's pretty much it. It'll do that on the eave walls as well. Um, just same thing going on here. And then you can go into advanced edit and you can go into individual openings or individual walls, and you could change the trackboard and manipulate all these different settings here, either on the wall level or in the opening level. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much all to say on that as well. And let's see here. The last thing that we did, and we probably still have some work on this one, but I'm going to remove the roof. I do have some interior walls on this building. Um, and maybe I'll jump over into the 2D view. And if I click on some of these interior walls, and you can double click, or I could come over here to pull up some of these properties. Um, you notice we have this A and B side of this wall, and that corresponds here, side A and B, and it's really talking about the liner and the trim on this wall. And you'll notice in this case, for this wall, I have part of it is matching the exterior. So it's going to be using those exterior panels. And then the side A here on this inside is using a liner. And I guess the complaint we had, or the request we had, was in this type of situation, it would treat the side B as being exterior in terms of the category it would put these into. It would treat everything as exterior sheathing and exterior trim. And then on this side, it would use interior. So you had exterior on one side and interior on the other side. And the request was, if it's interior, if it's inside of the building, then we want it to show up in the interior category. And so that is what we did here. So for anything that we have an interior, and in SmartBuild, their usages pretty much is what they fall under. So anything that's on the interior of the building is going to show up as interior. The one exception to that is the actual stud framing, which we only have one category of just stud framing. But for things like the panels, we do have these interior wall panels that are showing up. So these are going to show up as interior if they're on the inside of the building. And that even includes on the inside of the exterior walls. And then also any of the trim is going to show up as like inside corner, interior base, anything, including the openings as well, like this interior door header, trim parts. Those will all show up underneath this usage of interior. And one of the main reasons that some people have wanted to see this is you can set up these categories up here to separate out materials in different categories. So you could have all interior finishes potentially as a category. And then you can organize these usages to go into these different categories. So you could have all your interior going into an interior category tab that shows up here. And then that can filter down through some of your outputs and some different things. You can organize that as you do your material list and different outputs and things. So the main push for this was to be able to keep these organized under one interior section. And maybe those get shipped out later, or there's lots of different ways that you can use these. So at this point now, if it's interior, whether it's matching the exterior or matching the liner, it is going to show up underneath these interior categories. Except for the stud framing, which, well, that's one of those things that if you do want to see that, let us know. Right now, we're just keeping all the stud framing in a single group. So studs are just going to come in as studs, and you can kind of decide where you want to put those, but they're not going to be separated out by interior or exterior if you're doing, I guess, exterior walls as stud frame as well. Okay, so One last thing that you'll probably notice is that we have to set this up so that the colors change just automatically. So if we change to a different color here, it's going to change right away. Before you did have to do a refresh. So now this happens really quickly. So this is kind of a first step into doing some of these things to happen automatically without having to go and refresh and go up to the server and get information. Um, so you can switch these kind of colors really quickly if you're kind of just walking through, seeing what looks good. It's going to be quicker to kind of run through a bunch of colors with a client potentially. Um, you will have to hit refresh to get a updated price, something to be just aware of. It does need to go up to the server to get the pricing if you have different pricing for different colors. So this will not update, even though the color's updated in the model until you hit a refresh. Um, but let us know how that works for you. Hopefully, we'll find ways of making other changes that you can do quickly without having to do that refresh. I'm going to hit save here because we'll do a couple outputs and just to see what some of these new outputs. So full circle here, kind of looking back at the outputs that we set up in the settings. So I did the wall layout, which is large font. I have a wall layout with the medium font. I did include yeah, the door and window schedule on both of these. And I think maybe I'll do a post layout. I'll do a stud layout. There are some stud walls here. So the three layouts that were affected are the wall layout, the post layout, and the stud layout. So for all of these, you can do the same kind of thing. I'll just download all these and we'll just take a quick look at them. In my system, I don't have long descriptions for any of my openings. So it's not going to be quite as apparent. And also I'm using the schedule. So that actually, those descriptions in the wrapping won't show up at all. But let me see if I can zoom in here a little bit and share this tab instead. So in this case, I'm not doing the descriptions. Usually the descriptions would show up here and they kind of run this way and they could be long and overlap each other. If you're not using the schedule, you should see those wraps. So they're going to be just confined more into one area. I am using the schedule. So you can see for windows, we're going to get a W1 for door, a D2 in this case. For our sliders, it's SLD2, and I think overhead doors is OHD, which I didn't put any overhead doors in here. And then for the doors and windows in this case, you'll see that there's a separate door and window schedule down here that these correspond to. So in this case, we got rid of the descriptions altogether and just put it onto the door and window schedule. And I think this was the medium font here. And there's nothing too crazy going on here. So, but these dimensions, if they didn't fit inside, then they would adjust the size or they would bump them outside. So there's some automation going on there with cleaning up some of those dimensions. Post layout, the same kind of thing is going on. This should look a lot cleaner. And as you can see here, I do have a post schedule for this post layout. And we included this and kept this on the same drawing. We are talking about for the next release, just if you're using a door and window schedule, that we're going to put both the post schedule and the door and window schedule on a separate sheet, as opposed to doing it this way. This is how it's going to work right now. If you have both schedules, you'll get the post schedule, and then you'll get a separate sheet with the door and window schedule on your post layout if you want both of those. So if you have any feedback on those, let us know. Same kind of thing here. There's just these labels that are going to be corresponding down here. Stud layout. We did add some dimensions to the stud layout. We added in the opening dimensions. If you do use a stud wall, if you're using exterior stud walls, it will dimension to the openings now, which we did do before. So it's going to dimension just like we do with like the post layout and the wall layout. But same kind of thing going on here with the schedule. And then, so here's the last one, which is using large font. So as you can see, I pretty much could get away with the large font on this particular job. But for now, you can set those up with some different fonts, and if you have problems with the large font, maybe then you could re-output it with a medium or small font and see if that helps clean it up. So just an option there to control the size of that font. And okay, I think that is it. So took quite a bit of the hour, but we still have 9 minutes here officially. Um, and also, we can stick around longer. So at this point, open it up to any sort of questions that you guys have. Anything that came in through the chat. Any comments anybody else at SmartBuild wants to jump in on? Anything I left out or important details? So kind of just free for all here. Guys, still with me? Somebody say hi.
Hi, Sean.
Um,
I think Paul is trying to get on here. There was a question added in the chat. Ben said, when adding porches, lean-tos, or attached buildings, it's adding extra posts in the eave or gable wall. Can this be eliminated or changed without having to change to even spacing? This especially happens when having the attached coming off the building as a gable roof, not shed. So
so that's adding in post on the gable.
I think what Ben is saying is that when you have an attached building that comes in on the side of your building, it is putting a post in where it hits. So maybe
Mhm.
if you can pull up the site, Sean, because you're not sharing anything right now, and just throw an attached building on the side of a building, maybe we can get some talking around that, and then um, you guys can feel free to unmute yourselves if you wish to talk. So Ben, if you want to join in the conversation about this particular issue.
Yeah,
So
I was just adding posts where the attached building was being attached to the existing building. So if you were to make that attached building just a little bit wider, like let's say an extra 5 feet, it would add an extra post in between.
So yeah, because it did add these two posts because neither of these are on center. Yeah. Whoops. Yeah. What am I doing here? I just did that wrong. Let's do 15. Oh, I did it again. Okay. 1 second here.
Yeah, so right now, Ben, when you have an attached building, a, a gable attached building like this one that's attached to another building, the program does add a post in there where that building comes in. Um, and it's kind
This
of
is on
always done
center.
that. This is how we've done attached buildings from day one. Is that it'll put a post there where that building comes into the main building, and part of that is, well, you got to have somewhere to attach the girts from your attached building, don't you? Uh, you
Oh,
gotta you
fair
gotta
enough.
tie that in somehow. So, um, but we're open to more feedback from you guys who are actually using this, because as I've said before, we just write this stuff. We don't actually use it, and so kind of have to rely on you guys. So in this case, it's a gable attached building, and it threw a post in at each side. So you're saying you would not do that, Ben?
I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I honestly don't know. Normally, I haven't. I'm not sure why it would on a gable and not a shed, I guess.
Primarily because something has got to hold up the end of that truss carrier that's holding up the trusses that are holding up the roof of that attached building. So those truss
Mm,
carriers, they're held up by that post in the main building.
Oh, fair enough.
you're talking about these truss carriers?
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that's the intent. Um, it actually, as I'm looking at it, looks like there's a girt on that wall, just like you would have on a shed. Um,
Nope,
and
makes
it looks like
sense.
it's holding back the interior girts to make room for that. I, I think the bottom line, Ben, is we need to take a hard look at what we do at those intersections for a gable attached building like this, or if you change that attached building to a shed attached building, Sean,
Hmm.
um, you'll notice that it does change what goes on there. Um, and then I think if you have it a shed roof and you have that rotated shed roof, it changes it yet again because that's a third option. Um, and then obviously whether the walls are enclosed or not is going to have an impact on that. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
so I think there's several combinations there. And so everyone that's on this call that has strong feelings about what should happen there, uh, uh, if you have strong feelings about what should happen there, please get us some feedback. Send us some pictures or screenshots or whatever of what you would prefer to see happen. What it's doing now that you don't like. Any of those things, and just let's. Our goal is to create software that's going to make your jobs easier, and so
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't even think about the truss carrier part of it, so I appreciate you bringing that up because that does make a lot
yeah.
more sense now.
And like I said, that's simply an excuse. That is my naive stance of why I said, "Oh, we're going to need a post there, aren't we?" And
Well, there is no truss carrier on the shed. There's
yeah, there's no truss carrier on the shed, but
why.
yeah,
That
but then
logic doesn't quite
what's
work here, but
yeah, well
you know,
on the
the Eve Only.
shed, yeah, on the
Uh-huh.
shed on an eave wall, we don't put it in there. I don't know why it would be different on a shed on a gable wall.
Yeah,
That might be a recent change because
yeah,
gable
that would
walls
seem.
are different when it comes to posts, and we have different rules for where we put posts on gables. So um,
Mm-hmm.
again, I think it's worth taking a look at those scenarios and seeing what should or shouldn't happen. Megan commented that our trusses aren't set up like that. We would also need to be able to this to be able to be altered and removed. So so yeah, I mean, is there a setting when you create the attached building, a checkbox to say include posts where it hits the main building? Is that the answer for this, uh, or
That could be
is
an
there some
answer to
kind of
that.
intelligence we can build into the system to say, oh, yeah, you would need it in this case, but not in this other case. Um, one of the things that
Ideally,
we've
we would
discovered over
want,
the yeah, one of the things we've
ideally we
discovered
would
over the years of
more
implementing
check.
this is that
Right.
yeah, we've discovered that we can put that intelligence in there and get it to match the way Steve does it, but that doesn't help Ben or Megan because they do it different.
Mhm.
And so
Mm.
Right.
trying to read Steve's mind does not necessarily help anybody else. Uh,
Yeah.
and no, I don't know who Steve is. I just made him up. But on the other hand, having a bunch of checkboxes,
Could get a little confusing at times.
well, and it can
Yeah.
get really annoying when every time you put in an attached building, you have to remember to go check all those checkboxes. We
Yeah.
do have an enhancement on the list that I'm hoping is coming soon, which is to be able to set up when I create an attached building. I'll have a little combo box up at the top here that says what style of attached building is this, and it'll
Mm.
be default, and you'll be able to set up those defaults. you'll be able to change these settings and then save them as your default settings or save them as a new setting. So if you have a type A attached building and a type B attached building, or you have you know, a standard attached building or a special cold storage attached building that has a different set of all these settings, you could set all these settings up, including all these advanced ones, and then just save them as a set of presets. And then you can, anytime you go to add an attached building, you can just pick one of those presets. And you can change it after you pick the preset, but when you
Yeah.
pick the preset, it's going to switch all your settings over to that. So I think that will help that particular issue of you don't necessarily want to have to go change a bunch of settings every time you put an attached building in.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So
Thank you.
anyway, thinking forward, but okay, so we need to get some attention paid to what happens where an attached building hits another building. I mean, even I think down to the point of if there is a post there, what is that? Is that a corner post? Is that a eave post? Is it a gable post? Um, if I'm gonna put a post there,
Yeah, because I have tried eliminating the eave post or corner post or whatever it's called, and it eliminates all of them. And so that doesn't work either.
And so how did you try to eliminate them?
I can't remember now. That was a while
Like
ago.
spacing?
I
Because I'm
think I
not sure.
selected the wall itself
Okay.
and took off the corner post or eave post or whatever it's called, and eliminated both the outside corner post and the inside corner post. Which obviously the outside corner post you still need there.
Okay. So on the like this wall, you got rid of the corner post, or got rid of
So
one of the posts, but it got rid of both of them. Is that
yeah,
okay? Yeah. Let's. Is there another way to do that?
not currently, no, and that's where if we had a setting for intersection post, which is what I would
Yeah.
call that if I was going to name it, um, since Fred has already taken. So if there was a setting for intersection post material, and then you could set that to none for a particular porch potentially.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do an attached building, you could say what is your intersection post material, and you could say it's match post or it's none. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a good option, and that way, if people want to have a post there, they can actually put one there as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. It's on the list.
all right. Speaking of the list, Miles Construction asks, will we see any updates on the insulation in the buildings? Half a cold storage and half insulated instead of making a detached building. Um, that's the first part of his question.
Mm-hmm. That is on the list.
Yeah, and the way that we plan to attack that is what we call rooms. And so if you turn off the roof on this one, Sean, just talk to the roof. Yeah. So this little attached building over on the left side, that's a room. The porch over on the right hand side, or sorry, on the left hand side, porch, the open porch over there, that's a room. Um, these both of these little sheds you added on are rooms, and then there's a big room here with the garage door in it and or the slider door in it, and then a couple more rooms here. So each of those rooms you would be able to specify how you're treating the interior. And right now, the best solution that we have for handling insulation is to have a sheathing assembly that includes the sheathing and the material for the insulation. So you can have a material, sheathing material, and say this wall has uh, drywall. This wall has drywall plus insulation. So you could do something more like that.
Will that change on the interior exterior walls as well?
On the interior exterior walls.
Yeah,
Well,
so if you
one of
add
the
a
things
room, like I know
yeah, one
you
of the
can
things you
change
have
like
to,
the interior walls.
yeah, one of the things you have to be able to do if you look at this this little room over here, where that brown door is, so that back corner room. If you were to make this an insulated room, what you'd want to be able to do is say, all right, so the door on the I'm gonna throw up if you keep spinning it around. The door with the interior wall with the door in it. That wall would be insulated on what from here is the back side of it. That would be insulated. The big divider wall that divides this and the other room from the garage, well, I'll call the garage area, uh, half of that would be insulated. And then the two exterior walls would also have portions of them insulated and portions of them not. So the key for this idea of rooms is that when you specify the interior sheathing for a room, you're specifying it for all four walls, which is the portions of all four walls that are exposed when you're standing in this room. And that's how I think about it, and that's how I
Yep.
think we should implement it. So that you can just click on this room and say, Mongo want this room to use insulated drywall, and then you can click on the other wall and say, I'm feeling a little 70s. I'd like wood paneling in this room, please. And then similarly,
Is
ceiling, right? I want ceiling in this room, but not in that room, or vice versa.
yeah, is currently when you're putting in the interior finish, like it's counting for all the exterior walls, and you can't change that if
Yeah,
you
you can
want a
change it on
portion
a
of
wall
the
by wall
exterior
basis.
wall.
Yeah, you can change the whole wall, but it's all or nothing. And so you need to be able to
Yeah,
change part of a wall. And we could give you a tool to say, okay, so for this wall, the first 11 feet of it is this material, and the next 16 feet is this other material. But I think we're going to be better served if we allow a user to say, this room uses this setting, and have that.
that would actually be really good. And then the only thing is with when you're in 2D view, it shows it as walls. Like even when you add a room, it shows it as interior walls, not interior rooms.
Right. So you'd be able to you can add a room, but it's just a macro for putting in walls. Um,
Yeah.
but again, in this view, there's the main room. There's the two rooms that we created with these two interior walls, but there's also the two rooms for the lean-tos on the top and on the left, and then also that wraparound open porch. That's a room because I want to be able to select that room and say this room has ceiling. The rest of
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't, but this room has ceiling. Um,
So I guess if there's a way that it could like separate the two rooms as individual rooms,
yeah,
like the
my
interior.
yeah, my vision would be that there'd be another tab here that says rooms,
Mm-hmm.
and you click that, and it would show you. Well, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rooms, and then you could click on one of those rooms and set a bunch of things for it, like does it have ceiling or not,
Yeah.
and what's the interior finish for the walls that are facing that room. Um,
Yeah, as I understand, like with Miles's question there, like we have a lot of buildings as well. Like for instance, if you have a house, like the shop side would have interior metal, the house side would just be insulation, essentially drywall ready.
yep.
But in order to separate it, you have to do it as an attached building as opposed to just adding a wall.
Right. And then the other wrinkle is that there might be a case where half of this room is insulated and the other half isn't, but there's no wall.
Yeah,
And so for that, my solution for that is to give you the ability to put in a wall that is just a divider, just a
that's
space
right.
divider.
And
So you
then
can
and
put
then
a pseudo
whatever
wall.
on the
Yeah. There's no framing or anything on that wall. It is just a divider that divides that space up into two separate rooms.
mm-hmm.
Because then you can have things like, well, this room over here on the lower left, if that int one only came down halfway and stopped at that corner, this is still a room over here. It's the dining room. The other side is the living room, right? You want to name them separately and you want to finish them separately. I want tile in the dining room, but wall to wall carpet in the living room, or vice versa. So
Yeah, or even like Miles was saying, like have the section where it has the over or the slider doors, like that would all be cold storage, so there'd be no interior finish at all.
yes, yeah,
And then the other two
yep,
rooms would be
yeah,
finished.
yeah. Although in that case, you kind of have to have a wall dividing the insulated and non-insulated portions, or you you lose the insulatedness. But
Yes, 100%.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, that's the thinking for handling that particular issue. It's still on the drawing board. We haven't done any work on it, and I don't believe we even scheduled it yet, Sean. Um,
No, but it is coming.
yeah, and
You
I
know,
would dearly love to be able to
yeah,
say, you know what, this is more important than whether there's a post there or not. But
yeah, we might have to do
but that
both.
is yeah, this is a lot more important than whether you can do stairs, which is the other half of Miles's question was any info on stairs for lofts instead of making several little lofts. Uh,
That one
there is
is.
some thinking going on about that. There is some design work going on about it.
Mhm.
I don't believe that we've got anything scheduled for stairs yet. Um,
No, it kind of got bumped on the
yeah,
list.
I mean, is question for this anybody that feels like weighing in on this? Is there value in doing stairs if we don't do railings?
I don't think you
Because
need
that's
to
my
do railings. I
concern.
think even just stairs would be would be more helpful.
Yeah, my concern is that as soon as we do stairs, it's like your wife when you get new kitchen cabinets, right? She's that's great. Now we need new appliances because they don't go with it. Great, we can do stairs, but it doesn't do any good if we can't do railings. And
Yeah,
railings
I can't speak for everybody
scare the heck
else,
out of
but
me.
I mean for me, for what we do, just putting stairs in would be more than enough. You don't need to add in railings or anything like that.
And you know that what's mentioned here is stairs instead of making several little lofts. If we had the ability to say, okay, you can define your stairs, and what you're going to get is several little lofts, or is it just a little loft for the landing, and then the stair is a couple of stringers and some treads and risers? Um, there's so many different ways to make stairs. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the stringers are the stringers on the side, or are they underneath? Uh, it, uh, we do need to do
Yeah,
it. It is there. We are thinking about it, but it's not yet ripe enough to turn into
yeah.
something that we give what people are going to want. Miles
As
says
Miles just
customers,
noted, it's more for visualization than anything.
yeah, they just want to be able to. Okay, great. There's a loft. How do I get up to the loft? Well, just
Yeah.
picture.
Just imagine there's stairs there.
Yeah, just visualize. Yeah, if they could visualize, they wouldn't need this tool. Um, so yeah, I mean, is there value in just a placeholder that says, "Hey, there's stairs that go from here to here." There's no material associated with it. You don't get any detail on it. It just kind of looks sort of like stairs. Uh, would there be value in doing that baby step? I don't know.
I think that would be a good starting point for sure.
Yeah, and we kind of need that before we frame it anyway. So we need that, and then let's flesh it out with a little bit more details of where the actual sticks are going to go. And now count up the sticks and give me a material list for that. Uh, cut list for cut list for stringers is a little scary, but
Because again, like I can't speak for everybody else, but like we have a place where we get our stairs from, so we already would have pricing for that. So we and they would supply the full stairs, so we wouldn't need to worry about the materials per se. It'd just be nice to visualize where the stairs are going to be.
okay. So for you, a schematic stair, if you will, would be sufficient.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Um, okay. Good to know that there might be value in just a baby step on a stair. It just says stairs go here. Just sort of
Yeah,
fuzzy.
yeah. Even if it's just like just something to get it moving anyway, and then you can you guys can be able to should be able to go from there, right?
Yeah, I would think when you're doing that, it might be useful. If it was me, I would think that I'd like to be able to not only put in a schematic, but also assign a SKU and a price to it so that I could order it and include in the
That would be
price.
pretty cool too. But I mean, to start off, even if you could have a visualization, that'd
Yeah,
be
visualization. Then you can always go to job review and add a miscellaneous item that represents the stair. Uh,
that's right. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm just thinking of what I would like to see if I was having to do this, but again, I don't build pole barns, so I don't know what I'm doing. Let's see. There was another question here. John would like to see a little bit more on the span table update. John, you still around?
Yes, I am.
All right. Yeah. So basically, what we've done with the span tables is allow you to specify that. All right, I've got my building width and my building and the wall height. Those are inputs into the span table. But there's another variable that I need to be in the span table, which is um, building color. If it's orange, I use one material. If it's green, I do another material, just to make something up, right? And so you could add a job question of building color, and then if your building is orange, your span table says use this material. If it's red, it says use this other material. So in addition to the, the inputs in the span table, and again, if you think of a span table as when I select auto for my Eave post, for instance, uh, that means Mr. Program, you figure out what posts I'm going to use by looking them up in this table. And this table is I need to know what the building width is and what the wall height is and what the loading is from the job tab. If you give me those three pieces of information, I can go figure out what posts I need. And if you're saying, well, no, there's another piece like Sean did here that I need to know, which is, are you using permacolumns or are you using posts in the ground? Because if you're using posts in the ground, I'm going to give you one material. If you're using permacolumns, I'm going to use. If you're using a pier system, I'm going to give you a different solution. So does that make sense?
Yeah, but where I'm confused is, so I'm configuring for somebody in an area right now that has a lot of different wind loads. So we have four criteria, and that is wind load, building height, bay spacing, and then building width. In that order, those are the four most important things you look at in that order. And then from there, you would choose whatever column you're going to use. So I don't see bay spacing in there because out west here where I'm configuring right now, there's a lot of different bay spacing options.
Right. So Sean, if you pull up the span table.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about span tables for posts, John?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So if you go to ePost, we have wall height is the wall height. You mentioned that. Um,
Mhm.
Post spacing, which is the bay spacing, right? That's the distance from one post to the next. That's the bay spacing. And then building depth. And then you also
Okay.
mentioned wind load, right?
Right. Which in this case, let's just say that was foundation type.
Yeah. You could add wind load as an input, right?
Okay.
Um, so you
So
could add.
in this scenario, if I change my post spacing in my master build, is it going to look at post spacing as a criteria? And here's why I'm asking this. I was setting up purlin tables yesterday, and we have spacing. Purlin spacing is one of the questions in the purlin table that's hard set. Yet it doesn't look at that. It ignores it. It only goes with the very first one that works. And we have purlins that'll work in all these different snow loads and all these different bays on every single spacing. Yet if I go change the spacing in the main setup, it doesn't look for that. It just selects the first one every time, which is 24 inches. So I'm wondering if it's doing the same thing in here.
It shouldn't be for the Perlin spacing. What it should do is with this Perlin table, for instance,
Hmm.
um,
Uh-huh.
and this is a horrible example because no matter what I put in, it's going to select 2x4. But if I had rafters at 10 foot on spacing and I had Perlin spacing set to 3 feet, it would look at this and say, well, I can't use the first one because that's more than the rafter spacing is more than 8 feet. So I can't use this first one, second one, third one. The fourth one, I could use the fourth one, except my Perlin spacing is 3 feet, and that's more than this 2 feet. So I can't use that one. We'll get to the fifth row here and say, oh, I can use this one. It's 10-foot rafter spacing and 3-foot Perlin spacing. So I'm going to pick whatever material is specified here on this fifth line.
So if you go back in and you change the purlin spacing then, but don't change anything else about the building, in theory, it should change what it selects for your material, correct?
Correct. If I change my Perlin spacing to 2 feet, then it should drop up a row to the material above it. If I changed it to 4 feet, it should drop to the one below it. And if I change my
Yeah,
Perlin spacing to 5 feet, it should say, hey, I couldn't find a Perlin material that worked.
I, I, I think I might have something set up wrong then because when I change the purlin spacing, it ignores that. It just selects the very first thing it comes to on the chart, which is 2 foot,
Yeah,
because I have it at 2 foot
yeah,
and then 19.2 and then 16.
yeah. Reach out to support and let's dig into that because
Okay.
that should not be
Okay.
happening. Um,
Royden and
and
I have kind of
so
been talking about it a little bit. So,
yeah. Um, so back to your original question. If you had wind load as a column here, um, I'm assuming that think because I think we've only tested this, Sean, with choice types. So I don't think that you could just have an open-ended wind load. But if wind load was a combo box, a list box, and you could pick one, then we could say if the wind load is this, then use this line. If it's not, then you can't. Because that's what this basically says. So this first line,
is
if
it
your wall height is less than or equal to 14'4", and your post spacing is less than or equal to 10 feet, and your building depth is less than or equal to 50, and your foundation type is set to pier, then you can pick this one. If any of those is no, then look at the next one.
hmm,
If any of those is no, then look at the next one.
gotcha.
So that's
So if
how
you
the
set that,
tables work.
if any job question, if I understood this right in the beginning, any job question that you set up to trigger, which we can set up for now, not just loading, we can set up for, correct?
4 in addition to loading, yeah.
Okay. That applies to every single, it's going to be on every single span table though, right? Not
It will
just
be,
eve
but
post, corner post.
right. But like this one, so foundation type, pier and in ground. If you switch, Sean, if you switch over to Perlin's, your Perlin span table, you'll notice that foundation type is blank. That's because the foundation type doesn't matter for this
Doesn't
table.
matter. Yep. Okay. So we can turn it off.
It
Okay.
has to
Great.
be here, but you can just
Right.
leave it blank and it just gets
Understood.
ignored. Yep.
Understood. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. Always helpful. Always happy to be. Absolutely no assistance whatsoever. All
No, that
right.
answers well. So
Okay, great. It's just one of those things where it's like I understand it and it makes perfect sense. I'm trying to get to what can I say to have you go, oh, but I just heard that, so I think we're good. But
yes.
yeah, as far as your purlins, if you're having problems with your purlins, it doesn't seem to be picking the right ones. Reach out to support. All right, that is it for questions in the chat. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Congratulations. Anything else?
It sounds like a no.
Sounds like a no.
Sound of silence. All right. Well, thanks everybody. We will do this again coming up here in a few weeks. Appreciate your time.
Bye, guys.